If this video appeared to you today, it's no coincidence. There are paths that only the awakened can see, and perhaps this is your moment. Take a deep breath and feel. Something inside you already knows that it wasn't out of curiosity that you got here. There's a silent call that transcends time, beliefs, and the world's distractions. A call that can't be heard with the ears, but with the soul. And if you're listening now, it's because you're ready. Osho said, when the disciple is ready, the way appears. Not because someone showed it, but because it made itself visible. This means that the true spiritual path is never found externally. It emerges when the inner noise dissolves, when the weary mind finally falls silent. Most people seek light but flee from silence. They want answers but are afraid to listen to their own hearts. The path of the chosen begins exactly where the noise ends. Have you ever felt like life seems to be pushing you towards something greater, even when you try to resist? That there are moments when everything that once made sense begins to crumble. This is how the call manifests itself, as discomfort, as emptiness, as a kind of pain that cannot be healed by distractions. Many call it a crisis. Osho called it beginning of consciousness, and it is at this point that the seeker begins to walk alone, not by choice, but by destiny. The spiritual path that only the chosen can walk has no signs, no shortcuts, and not always company. It's a silent road made of detachment, renunciation, and presence. And the further you advance, the more you realize that true awakening isn't about accumulating knowledge, but about unlearning what you've been taught. It's a return to your essence, a reconnection with what has always been there, your own being. Perhaps, on the outside, nothing has changed. The work remains the same, the people remain the same, the world continues its chaotic rhythm, but on the inside, something has begun to shift. A new lucidity emerges, a gentle restlessness, a desire to understand the invisible. It is the beginning of awakening. Osho said that life only truly begins when you stop living on autopilot, when you stop chasing what doesn't fulfill you and turn inward. And this is what distinguishes the chosen one. They feel that meaning lies beyond what can be seen. Not everyone hears the call. Only the ready recognize it. The call doesn't shout, it whispers. And the more noise there is around you, the harder it is to hear. That's why the world seems to resist when someone awakens. Because the silence of a conscious being is disturbing. The simple fact that you seek something deeper is already a sign that you are among the few who dare to look beyond the surface. There are those who live and die within the same cycle. Wake up, work, distract yourself, sleep, repeat. And there are those who at some point stop and ask themselves, who am I behind all this? This question is the gateway to the spiritual path. It is the moment the soul decides to return home. Osho said that the greatest courage is to look within and not look away, even when what you see is uncomfortable. And it is this courage that separates the chosen from the curious. While most seek formulas for happiness, the seeker seeks to understand what it means to be. While others accumulate, he releases. While the world rushes on, he stops. And in this stopping, something awakens. A presence that has always been there, waiting to be remembered. The spiritual path is not about arriving somewhere. It is about awakening to the place you already are. You may feel alone on this journey, but know this: no true seeker is alone. All who have awakened before have left subtle marks, words, silences, signs. Osho, Rumi, Buddha, they all walked this same invisible road, and now you stand before it. The question is, will you continue to hear the call, or will you go back to sleep? Allow yourself to be here. Don't fight the silence that's emerging within you now. It's not empty. It's the beginning of something greater. Perhaps at this very moment, the universe is preparing you to walk through a door that few have the courage to open. The spiritual path that only the chosen can walk is not a prize. It's a gift. It's the beginning of a journey that changes everything without needing to change anything. And as the sound of the outside world fades, something inside you begins to awaken. Feel, observe. Don't run away. This is the point where the old begins to die, and the new, silently, begins to be born. If something inside you resonated with these words, it's no coincidence. It's your soul recognizing the truth behind them. Write in the comments, I recognize the call. These simple words aren't just a phrase. They're a silent commitment to your own evolution. When you express your feelings, the universe listens. And each time someone writes, it creates a current of energy between everyone who is also awakening. This space is more than a channel. It's a meeting place for those tired of superficial answers, for those seeking to understand the invisible, for those who know that true spirituality begins in inner silence. So, if this message touched your heart, if it made you stop for a moment and reflect, leave your like, not as an automatic gesture but as a sign of presence. And if you feel like this is just the beginning of something bigger, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Each video is a new step on this journey of consciousness, a reminder that the spiritual path is not a solitary one. There are others walking alongside you, even if in silence. So breathe. Allow these words to settle within you, and write in the comments what you felt as you heard them. Perhaps it was peace, perhaps it was restlessness. Both are signs that something is moving, because when the soul begins to awaken, nothing remains the same. The path is before you, and the journey has only just begun. Have you ever felt like the whole world seems asleep while something inside you awakens? That no matter how hard you try to fit in, there's a silent part of you that observes everything from the outside, as if you don't quite belong here. This feeling of not belonging, of being out of step with the rhythm of the majority, is one of the first signs that your spiritual awakening has begun. Osho said that the path is narrow because the true seeker walks alone, and yet they are never alone. Alone in the world, yes, but accompanied by consciousness. There comes a time in life when the noise of people, the empty conversations, and the mechanical routines begin to lose their luster. What once entertained now feels superficial. Places that once brought pleasure now seem heavy. Relationships that once seemed indispensable suddenly reveal themselves to be fragile, based on needs rather than true connection. It is at this point that many become confused and believe they are becoming cold, distant, and antisocial. But the truth is that this isolation is not loneliness. It is selection. It is the universe filtering out what no longer vibrates at the same frequency as your new state of consciousness. Osho said that the common man seeks companionship because he fears facing himself, while the awakened man finds fulfillment in silence. And perhaps this is what you are experiencing now, the discomfort of the emptiness that precedes rebirth. What was once a cycle of constant noise now becomes a pause. The silence which once seemed frightening begins to feel familiar. You feel the call to be with yourself, not out of escape, but out of a need for truth. The spiritual path begins when you stop looking for the meaning of life outside and begin to feel it within. But this process isn't easy. The modern world has taught us to confuse movement with progress and distraction with happiness. When you start to distance yourself from the crowd, guilt inevitably sets in. You begin to wonder if you're wrong for no longer wanting to participate in the same conversations, the same arguments, the same illusions. And that's when spiritual pain arises. Not the physical pain, but the kind that manifests when your soul knows it's changing and your mind still tries to resist. It's the conflict between who you were and who you're becoming. There will be days when you'll feel like no one understands you, and perhaps, in fact, no one does. Because the experience of awakening is unique, non-transferable. No teacher, no book, no video can live it for you. Osho always said, "Truth cannot be taught, only awakened." And that's what happens when the seeker begins to walk alone. They become an isolated flame in the darkness, but their light is enough to illuminate their own path. Notice how people's energy shifts when you begin to change. Some pull away, others try to pull you back into the old pattern, as if they can't bear to see someone break free. This isn't a coincidence. It's a spiritual law. When a soul rises, it automatically challenges those still dormant. And that's why so many feel like they no longer fit in the same circle. It's not rejection, it's energetic realignment. You haven't lost people, you've simply stopped vibrating at their frequency. At times, this transition feels like mourning. It's as if a version of yourself is dying to make way for something purer, more conscious. The ego struggles, the mind questions, the body feels, but the soul knows. And when you begin to trust this inner wisdom, something calms. You realize that silence is not absence, it is total presence. It is the energy of the whole being at rest. It is in this silence that the seeker begins to hear the voice the world cannot hear, the voice of one's own conscience. If you feel like you're at this point, where everything seems to be falling apart and yet invisibly rearranging itself, know that this is precisely how the path of the chosen reveals itself. Spiritual awakening isn't a sudden light, it's a slow purification. It's about ceasing to be guided by the need for approval and beginning to follow the rhythm of the soul. Few endure this process because it requires the courage to be alone, to face one's own emptiness and recognize that the meaning of existence has never been elsewhere. Osho said that the collective mind creates a fear of being alone because it knows that silence is dangerous for the system. Silence awakens. It breaks the control of external narratives and returns power to the self. That's why when you begin to withdraw, everything around you tries to distract you. The world fears those who find peace in silence, because peace is the most revolutionary state there is. So if you now feel like you don't quite belong anywhere, if there's a quiet restlessness within you, if old conversations seem empty and the old you seems distant, don't be alarmed. This isn't the end. It's the beginning of awareness, the first step on a path that only the chosen can walk. And if these words resonated, if you felt something inside you was touched, write just one sentence in the comments. I am ready for silence. Don't isolate yourself out of bitterness. Move away out of awareness. There's a profound difference between escaping the world and choosing silence. One arises from fear, the other from lucidity. When you begin to awaken spiritually, the impulse to move away isn't a rejection of the other, it's an inner call to rediscover your center. Osho said, "Silence is not absence, it is total presence." This phrase contains one of the greatest secrets of the spiritual path. Solitude is not a void, it is the womb where consciousness is reborn. Conscious isolation is the cradle of clarity. And that's why when you begin to walk alone, the world interprets it as distancing yourself. But in reality, it's a closer relationship with yourself, with your essence, with what has always been forgotten in the noise of external demands and expectations. Osho reminded us that the human mind thrives on noise, thoughts, opinions, endless conversations, accumulated desires. The mind fears silence because in silence it ceases to exist. Silence is the symbolic death of the ego, and that's precisely why it's so healing. When you choose to retreat, you begin to see what previously went unnoticed. Relationships become clearer, intentions clearer, words weightier. It's like cleaning a foggy mirror. Suddenly the reflection reveals itself. And what many call solitude is, in fact, the purification of the gaze. It is in this state of stillness that the seeker begins to distinguish the essential from the superfluous. It is at this moment that truth approaches, because truth only visits those who make space for it. But the world doesn't understand. People confuse silence with coldness, solitude with abandonment. They'll say you're different. They'll try to make you return to your old vibration. It's natural. Other people's consciousness tries to preserve what it knows. But spiritual awakening is irreversible. Once you taste the taste of inner silence, you can never again be satisfied with noise. The soul once expanded never returns to its former size. Therefore, the path of the awakened seems lonely, but it is the most honest of paths. There is a dignity in those who choose silence. They don't need to justify themselves. They don't need to prove anything. Their own energy speaks. Osho said that a true master is one who teaches not with words, but with presence. And presence only arises in silence. It is this presence that begins to manifest in you when you stop trying to convince the world and simply observe. There is no longer a need to win arguments, to be understood, to be approved. The mature seeker understands that peace is worth more than any argument. It is in this state that isolation becomes a blessing. Solitude ceases to be a punishment and becomes a cathedral. Time slows down. The body breathes differently. The mind begins to yield. It is in this sacred space that you discover you don't need company to feel complete, because the inner emptiness is filled with awareness. Osho said that solitude is the flower of meditation. It blossoms when the heart stops begging for attention and begins to blossom on its own. But the process of walking requires courage. It's not easy to walk away from everything that has always given you a sense of security. The ego screams, fear rears its ugly head. The old self tries to convince you you're missing something. It takes determination not to give in. The spiritual path of the chosen is not an escape, it's a return to what is authentic, to what is silent, to what is eternal. When the whole world moves outward, the seeker decides to dive inward. And this reversal, is what awakens true freedom. Step back and listen to yourself. When you withdraw, the universe begins to speak. The answers you sought outside begin to emerge from within. It is at this point that solitude transforms into communion, not with people, but with existence itself. Osho said that those who learn to be alone never miss anything again, because they discover they already are everything. And when you reach this state, you realize that silence is not absence, it is presence multiplied. Many confuse spirituality with bitter isolation, with renouncing pleasure, with escaping from life. But true spirituality is the opposite. It's being so awake that nothing in the world can dominate you. It's moving among people without losing your center. It's looking at chaos and remaining at peace. Isolation isn't forever. It's preparation. It's the period in which the seeker learns to be whole before mingling again, because only those who have found themselves can truly connect with others. Perhaps right now, you're at that transition point. Between the old and the new, between noise and silence, between fear and trust. This is awakening in action. It's the moment when the soul expands and the body still tries to understand what's happening. Don't fight it. Allow yourself to feel. Allow yourself to rest in your own presence. The silence will guide you, and as it deepens, clarity sets in, and solitude transforms into freedom. Osho said that silence is the language of God, and everything else is a poor translation. So learn to listen to it. Every breath, every pause, every moment of stillness is a portal to reality. From that point on, you begin to live differently. You speak less, observe more, you react less, understand more. The world may remain the same, but within you something has irreversibly changed. And if these words touched the right place inside you, if they resonated like an old memory that was dormant, write just one sentence in the comments. I walk in conscious silence. Being chosen isn't about being better. It's about being called to see what most avoid. It's about going through one's own inner chaos and still remaining silent. It's about looking within and having the courage to not look away. Osho said that the chosen one is the one who dies to the old within and is born anew, free from the need to repeat what the world considers normal. The masses seek security. The awakened seek freedom. And this search isn't easy, it's intense, it's profound. It's a journey few are willing to undertake. To be chosen is to receive an invisible responsibility. It's to be the one who feels before others, who perceives the invisible, who carries the weight of conscience when the rest still sleep. The spiritual path doesn't deliver comfort, it delivers truth. And truth, when it arrives, isn't dressed in beauty. It comes raw, deconstructing, peeling away the layers of lies the mind has used for so long to protect itself. This is why many give up halfway. Because awakening isn't just about light, it's also about shadow. The chosen one doesn't run from the darkness, they learn to walk in it. When you begin this path, your first instinct is to resist. The mind tries to understand what's happening, tries to maintain control, tries to name the unnameable. But the spiritual path isn't understood logically, it's felt with an awakened heart. Osho said that the greatest obstacle to enlightenment is the need for certainty. The ego wants maps, wants guarantees, wants to know where it will end. But the true seeker learns to walk even without knowing the destination. They trust, and it's this trust that sets them apart. The chosen one is the one who continues when everything seems to fall apart. When no one understands, when answers disappear, when the silence seems too great, he remains. He doesn't seek escape, he seeks depth. While most try to fill the void with distractions, the awakened one dives into it and discovers that the void is the portal itself. Osho said that the void is the womb of the divine. It is there in the absence of everything that the being finds the all. Many think that being chosen means having special powers, mystical visions, or supernatural gifts. But no, being chosen means having enough sensitivity to see the truth and enough strength not to run away from it. It means being willing to lose everything false to find what is real. The true miracle is not walking on water, but transcending one's ego and continuing to love. The chosen one learns that there is no enlightenment without shadow, nor freedom without renunciation. They understand that the spiritual path is the process of dying before death, so that they can finally begin to live. Osho said that every human being is called, but few listen. The difference between those who awaken and those who remain asleep lies in the willingness to listen to what hurts. The call is silent, but firm. It appears as crises, losses, confusion, and the ego interprets this as punishment, when in fact it is an invitation. The universe only breaks down what no longer serves. When everything falls apart, it is because something new needs to be born. It is the old self dying to make way for the new, and it is at this point that the true seeker understands. Suffering is not punishment, it is initiation. Every pain, every loss, every detachment is a door opening to consciousness. But the mind, attached to what it knows, tries to hold on to what is already gone. Osho said that the conscious seeker clings to nothing because they know that everything that is real remains, and everything that passes away was never theirs. This is why being chosen is a responsibility. It is carrying the light even when the darkness seems strongest. It is keeping walking when the ground disappears, because something inside you knows that the true ground is beyond form. The chosen one is the one who realizes that the outer world is merely a reflection of the inner world. They don't try to change others, they start with themselves. They don't seek to control destiny, they learn to align with it. And as they transform within, the entire universe reorganizes around them. This is true spiritual alchemy, transforming one's own chaos into consciousness. But this process requires surrender. The ego doesn't want to disappear. It will fight to the end. It will try to convince you that you're wasting time, that you need to return to normal, that none of this is real. And it is at this moment that faith becomes the only guide. Not blind faith in doctrines, but living faith in something that vibrates within you, faith in your own experience. Osho said that true faith doesn't come from believing, it comes from perceiving. When you perceive the truth, believing becomes unnecessary. Being chosen also means learning to be at peace with not knowing. It's understanding that life doesn't need to be understood, just lived. It's feeling the presence of mystery without trying to decipher it. The mind wants answers, but the awakened heart wants connection. And it's in this state that transformation happens, when you stop trying to control and start allowing. The spiritual path of the chosen is an invisible road, traced in the stillness of the soul. There is no marked trail, no map. There are only steps taken in trust. Each silence reveals a little more, each pain reveals a hidden truth. The chosen one becomes one who no longer seeks paradise, because he discovers that paradise begins within. He understands that the divine is not somewhere distant, but in the space between one thought and another, in the instant when time stands still, in the breath that observes, in the gaze that understands. Osho said that the awakened person is not the one who knows everything, but the one who no longer needs to know. They simply are. And being at this level is the greatest act of courage there is. Few reach this point because it requires dying to control, to identity, to fear. But the chosen ones do not give up. They walk, even when no one understands, even when everything seems silent, because within them there is something that whispers, "Keep going." And if, upon hearing these words, something inside you vibrated, if you felt that this message was not just information but a mirror, write a simple but powerful sentence in the comments: "I accept the wake-up call." Osho said that observation is the beginning of freedom. Most people live trying to change everything around them, to correct, justify, argue, react. But the true seeker learns the opposite. They learn to witness. And this is what the challenge of conscious silence proposes. For 48 hours, try something simple but profoundly transformative. Don't explain. Don't react. Just observe. It seems easy, but it is in this exercise that the ego reveals its true strength. Conscious silence is the mirror where you see yourself as you truly are. When you choose to remain silent, the world begins to reveal itself. Other people's words sound different, intentions become clearer, and your own emotions gain voice. It's as if every external noise is an attempt to tear you away from your center, and yet you choose to remain. At first, silence may feel uncomfortable because you'll realize how accustomed you were to justifying yourself, responding quickly, trying to control how others perceive you. The ego thrives on this, the need to be seen, understood, approved. But silence is the most direct blow to the ego, because in it, there are no masks, no stage, no applause. Osho taught that silence is not the absence of sound, but the total presence of consciousness. It's being so whole within yourself that nothing external can disturb you. And when you begin to practice this, Something within you reorganizes. Conversations lose their weight, conflicts diminish, and life begins to reveal a dimension you had never perceived before, the dimension of presence. During these 48 hours, you'll notice how often you almost react automatically. You almost explain, you almost defend yourself, you almost try to fix something. But this time, just breathe and observe. Observe the discomfort. Observe the impulse. Observe the mind trying to create stories. And for a moment, do nothing. This non-action is the gateway to awakening. Osho said that the mind is like a turbulent lake. Only when the waters calm can you see the bottom. And silence is this lake, becoming a mirror. It's important to understand that conscious silence isn't repression. It's not about swallowing feelings. It's about understanding them without becoming a slave to them. The difference is subtle, but it's everything. The reactive mind reacts without observing. Consciousness observes before reacting. And in this gap between impulse and action, freedom is born. It's in this space that you discover that you are not your thoughts, not your emotions, not the noise of the mind. You are the silent observer behind it all. The challenge seems small, but it's a profound training for the spirit. When you remain silent, not only does your exterior change, but your energy field also transforms. People around you notice something different, even if they can't explain it. It's the power of presence, the energy of someone who doesn't need to prove anything, and this energy is magnetic. Osho said that a silent man can transform an entire room with just his presence, because his calm is contagious. In the beginning, you may feel resistance. Your mind will tell you it needs to speak, that it needs to justify itself, that silence is dangerous. But it's just your old identity trying to survive. Let it scream within you. Don't fight it, just observe. When your mind realizes you're no longer reacting, it will begin to calm down. And it is at this point that true silence emerges, not the imposed silence, but the natural silence, the one that doesn't require effort. This 48-hour challenge is more than a spiritual exercise. It's a revelation. It shows how much we are prisoners of speech and how much we confuse communication with noise. You'll realize that silence speaks louder than any words. It communicates truth, depth, and presence. When you stop trying to convince the world begins to truly listen to you. During this period, notice how time changes. The hours seem to lengthen, the mind slows, and perception becomes sharper. You begin to see beauty in small things. A distant sound, the wind, the light coming through the window. Osho said that silence is the gateway to the sacred because it is in it that life reveals itself without interference. When the noise disappears, existence speaks. And perhaps in the midst of this process, you'll realize something even more profound. Silence isn't an exercise you practice. It's a state you discover. It's always been there, but it's been obscured by the habit of reacting. The challenge is just the key that reminds you of this. When you get used to observing instead of responding, life stops being a sequence of automatic reactions and becomes a conscious dance. And if someone provokes you during these 48 hours, if the urge to respond arises, remember, every provocation is a mirror. The universe is simply testing you, asking if you've truly chosen silence or if you're just trying to practice it. It's in that moment that you can smile and remain silent. Because true power lies in not being moved by anything. Osho said that when a person discovers inner silence, the world loses its power to hurt them. No word touches them. No criticism destabilizes them. No absence wounds them. They become one with the whole, untouched. And it is this strength that begins to emerge within you when you decide to stop reacting. The 48-hour challenge is an invitation to your own essence. It requires no beliefs, no religion, just presence. It's an opportunity to reconnect with what is eternal within you. And when silence sets in, all that is false begins to fall away. What remains is the real, simple, full, free. So if you feel ready to experience this invisible power, if you want to put yourself to the test and see how silence can transform your energy, accept this challenge. Say nothing. Don't try to prove anything. Just experience what emerges. And when you're done, come back here and write a single sentence in the comments that carries the energy of this practice. I choose the silence that reveals. Taking care of your energy isn't about abandoning the world. It's about returning to it whole. It's about withdrawing, not out of indifference, but to avoid continuing to surrender what's fragmented. Osho said that true compassion arises when you are full of yourself, not empty. And this is one of the greatest spiritual truths that few understand. Most believe that spirituality is about total renunciation, about constantly sacrificing oneself in the name of love, about always being available to everyone. But this is a distortion. True compassion isn't born from exhaustion, it's born from overflow. When you give yourself without being whole, what you give to another is not love. It's neediness disguised as kindness. Osho taught that true love comes not from need, but from fulfillment. Those who have learned to be silent, those who have found peace within themselves, don't need others to be complete. They share what already fulfills them. Therefore, the spiritual path isn't coldness, it's awareness. It's the courage to care for oneself before caring for the world. Silence is not an escape. It is strength at rest. And this silent strength is what allows you to be present without losing yourself. When you learn to protect your energy, you begin to realize that many of the relationships surrounding you were not bonds, but rather unequal exchanges. You gave understanding and received demands. You gave presence and received noise. You gave attention and received demands. And for so long you believed this was normal. But spiritual awakening brings clarity that cuts like a blade. It shows you that not everything that seems like love really is. Protecting your energy is an act of profound love, not only for yourself but for everyone around you, because when you are in harmony, everything you touch also harmonizes. Osho said that a peaceful heart is more useful to the world than 1,000 people trying to save each other without first knowing themselves. And it is precisely in this balance between introspection and compassion that the seeker finds true center. It is possible to love and still set limits. It is possible to help without nullifying yourself. It is possible to be available without losing yourself. The problem is that the world has become accustomed to confusing empathy with submission. People expect those who are spiritual to never say no, never withdraw, never get angry. But the path of awakening doesn't turn you into a motionless statue. It awakens sensitivity, but also clarity. Osho said that consciousness is like a blade of light. It cuts through the false to reveal the real. And when you begin to see with the eyes of consciousness, you realize that being compassionate isn't about accepting everything. It's about acting wisely. True compassion is firm, but not rigid. It is gentle, but not naive. It understands that each being is in their own time of awakening, and therefore does not try to force anyone's evolution. The chosen one knows that silent example speaks louder than any speech. They do not try to convince others to change. They become the change. Osho said that the awakened person teaches not with words but with vibration. And this is what the conscious seeker does. They live so authentically that their own energy begins to heal effortlessly. When you become whole, love ceases to be a necessity and becomes an expansion. You don't love because you need to, you love because it's natural. You love without fear because you understand that nothing can be lost. And it is at this point that true compassion blossoms, not as an effort, but as a consequence. Love becomes your natural state of being, and peace becomes your silent language. Osho said that when the heart awakens, even silence becomes prayer. But to reach this state, you need to overcome the confusion between being cold and being conscious. Many people will accuse you of being different, of withdrawing, of being distant, and that's okay. Awakening changes your rhythm, and not everyone can keep up. The mature seeker understands that they don't need to defend themselves. They simply observe. They know that every judgment is a reflection of the other's limitations. They know that true love can't be explained. It manifests itself. Silence at this point transforms into active compassion. You begin to hear what you previously ignored. You begin to see the pain hidden behind others' actions, and yet you don't get involved in the drama. Osho said that observing without judging is the highest form of love, because those who observe without reacting offer space for others to see themselves as well. When you maintain your center, the world around you gradually begins to balance itself. Taking care of your energy, therefore, doesn't mean isolating yourself forever. It's about withdrawing enough to cleanse, heal, and return to the world with awareness. It's like the sea that recedes, only to return new waves to the shore. Osho said that life is movement, and movement needs pause. The seeker who understands this learns to flow between silence and action, between introspection and encounter. They become like bamboo, flexible yet firm. And perhaps upon hearing this, you realize you spent too much time trying to please, trying to be a light for others while fading away inside. But there is no authentic light in someone who lives exhausted. True light is born from the rest of the soul. When you learn to nourish yourself with your own silence, the glow returns naturally. It's the glow of someone who doesn't need to prove anything, of someone who has learned to be present without losing their essence. Osho said that the awakened person becomes a healing presence because their energy no longer carries conflict. They are love, but a love that does not corrupt. They are peace, but a living peace that observes, understands, and acts wisely. And this is the state you begin to reach when you understand that the spiritual path is not an escape, but a return to balance, to mature love, to silent awareness. And if, upon hearing all this, you felt that something inside you recognized itself, this desire to take care of your energy without closing yourself off, to love without losing yourself, to be at peace without withdrawing from the world, write in the comments just one sentence that carries this strength. I choose conscious compassion. You were not chosen to escape the world, but to illuminate what is within it. The spiritual path is not an escape from life, but a deep dive into it, with new eyes and an awakened heart. When the old I dies, the true path begins. Everything that seemed like chaos begins to make sense, and what once hurt you now teaches you. Osho said that rebirth does not happen when the body changes, but when consciousness awakens. And perhaps, at this moment, you are feeling this silent birth within yourself, a new perception, more lucid, freer, lighter. If this message touched you, if at any moment you felt peace, clarity, or even a silent recognition within your chest, leave your like right now. This gesture, although it may seem small, is what makes this message reach more people who, like you, are awakening in silence. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognizes this truth. So, subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell to continue receiving the next chapters of this journey. Each video here is a part of the same path, a reminder of who you are behind the name, the stories, and the masks. And now the next video awaits you. It's the natural continuation of this experience. Your awakening has begun, and it continues there, in the video that is now appearing.